I was feeling pretty good, but now I have to follow the king, so I've got that going for me. All right. Awesome. Today I'm here to talk with you all today about my thesis project for DSI. It's called Identity Explorers. But before I get started, I really want to introduce myself. I'm Danielle Hernandez. When people hear my last name Hernandez, I'm not often what they expect me to look like. I know this from personal experience. For instance, when I applied for my first job at a fast food restaurant in my hometown, I sent an email, it had my signature in it, had the same resume, and I didn't get the job. And the next day I went in person with one of my friends, and once they saw what I looked like, I got the job on the spot. I didn't know how to talk about experiences like that growing up until I went to college and was around other multiracial people for the first time in my life. And to be honest, they shared a lot of stories like mine, and a lot of them were a lot worse, especially if they moved through the world looking a lot differently than I did. Because of their stories, I was inspired to use my DSI thesis project to use design to support equity and diversity. Today we'll be talking about exploring identity, and for me, my identity is many things. It's being from the Midwest, and it's being multiracial. Multiracial, or two or more races, is the fastest growing demographic in the United States. Research has shown that children as young as 7 years old are able to detect racial and ethnic discrimination aimed at them. This statistic is particularly alarming for those who are multiracial because, by definition, they identify as belonging to more than one group, but in many instances feel like they don't fit in anywhere. In a recent study, children who reported frequent experiences with discrimination were at a higher risk of depression, anxiety, oppositional behavior, and other mental health problems, but only among the children with less developed understandings of their racial identities. So after reading those studies, I wanted to talk to different multiracial families and really get an idea of what racial identity was to them, and also how that understanding really started. And in speaking with so many families, they stated that it started at home, and it started with what sort of values and views their parents passed on to them. And speaking with these families, many white parents expressed that they didn't feel confident in speaking with their children about race because racism wasn't something that they had experienced personally. And many parents of color expressed that they felt like the entire weight of that instilling that understanding was on their shoulders. And they also recognized that depending on how their children looked, their experiences could be very different. So really in talking to these families, it became evident to me that it wasn't so much a conversation of why, but how to instill that understanding in children when they had never experienced being multiracial themselves. One particularly poignant quote was from one parent was, "I want my kids to feel like they can come to me and talk to me about anything, especially things that make them feel uncomfortable. That's my job as a parent." And in speaking with other young multiracial adults, they assumed that their parents didn't want to talk about race because it was something that they had never brought up with them. So they never told their parents about things that happened to them while they were growing up, and they've just now started to understand what it means to be multiracial as adults. So it became clear to me that they're all trying to learn and navigate what being multiracial means. And for my project, I wanted to look at how design could support instilling that understanding. So how might we all go on this journey of exploring identity together? How can design help families in exploring and creating that space for children to explore the identity with them? So I conducted several co-creation sessions with families all over New York City, and what we talked about were challenges that they were currently experiencing or those that they anticipated experiencing in the future. And we also talked about things that they felt confident and were already doing with their children. And things that came up were using books and children's books to really break down more complex issues into things that their children could understand. We also talked about play as a way of bonding with their children and something that they already enjoyed doing, and also creating as a way of expressing themselves. So I asked myself for this project how we could use those comfortable tools of books, play, and creating to support those conversations. And I wanted to share this quote from one of the families who participated. The father said that, "I like working on creative projects with my children. Whether it's a project for school or one that I come up with, stimulating my kids' creativity is always fun for me." So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my project. It's called Identity Explorers. And just to give you a bird's eye view before I go into more details, it's a system that addresses the need for experience, resources, and a supportive community for all guardians to take action in instilling a better understanding of identity in their multiracial children. It starts small on a more personal level within the family with these things called field guides, which have different activities in them to build experience within the family unit of talking about race. And from there, families can upload those field guides to a thing called a repository on identityexplorers.com, and they can also see what other families have uploaded and how they're all talking about race. So it's really providing resources for those families. And going even deeper, they can share these field guides with their friends and family members, and they can also meet up in person to create these field guides at events at different cultural institutions. So it's providing that need for community. So this is what those field guides look like, and these are just a couple of the different examples of structured activities that came from those co-creation sessions. For example, one of the challenges that families brought up was that they're oftentimes blending radically different cultures. So one of the activities that really speaks to that is building a plate of food and using different foods to make a meal that makes their child feel whole, and what it looks like for things from different cultures to be together. Another pain point that was brought up was feelings of otherness or bullying. Many parents expressed that their children were already being bullied or worried that they would be bullied for being different. So one of the activities is drawing a superhero that has different aspects from their different cultures, and it's building somebody that can be admired and that can be looked up to. So over the course of 4 weeks, I co-created with a bunch of really awesome families all throughout New York City. We did this mostly over Facebook and through text because a lot of families, unsurprisingly, were very busy. And they would fill out these field guides, and then at the end they were uploaded to be shared with everyone else. So this is how it works. This is my friend Maya. She really liked her field guide, and she really liked the cartoons that came with them, so she drew her own versions on the cover. And Maya's family really wants to talk to her about being multiracial. So they started with the first activity, which is asking the child what they already know about being multiracial and what it means to them. And this is what Maya drew out. So she is Filipino, and she's also American. Her parents are first-generation immigrants, and her father is from Serbia. And to her, all three of them held equal importance in her life. So after filling out her activity, her parents would upload that to the repository, and that's what that looks like once it's on the website. All the field guides start out the same, and this is what they look like once they're filled out and on the website. And once it's there, other children who are participating, like my friend Avia here, who did that superhero activity I mentioned earlier, can see what she shared, and she can see this. So this is her superhero, Kathy. As you can see, she's holding a Jamaican flag, which represents her mother's heritage. And on her superhero costume is the Jewish Star of David. She's also really into cats, which is why she has cat ears. She wanted me to make sure I shared that with all of you. So because it's both physical and digital, it's really important. And it's great that families can document this permanently and be able to refer back to it in the future. And it also provides a space for families to connect with others as it continues to grow. Based on the surveys that happened before and after my 4-week piloting with families, there was a 20% increase in how parents think their children understand their multiracial identity. But more importantly to me, it's the things that families shared along the way. Things like one mother shared that I'm telling her things all the time, but I never just flat out asked her, what do you think about yourself? So for parents, it was really helpful for them to gauge an understanding of how what they were sharing with their children was being interpreted and absorbed. And from there, they could really change what they were saying or how they were saying and really help foster that understanding in their children. Another mother also shared that she was interested in writing a book about Filipino American because one of the activities was looking for books and she had a hard time finding them. And especially after these activities, she wants her daughter to help illustrate them. Again, because it's so physical and digital, it provides a lot of different ways for identity explorers to grow. In the future, for me, I think it would be really important to bring it back to the Midwest where I'm from and where these conversations about race really aren't happening. I think a lot of really great organizations could partner, such as 826 National, public libraries, and different museums to be able to distribute these field guides as widely as possible to these underserved communities. Before I leave the stage, I'd really like to thank a lot of people, particularly the multiracial families that worked with me to really help shape what my understanding of being multiracial means by sharing what it means to them. I'd also like to thank everybody who's watching from the comfort of their own homes or desk right now. I'd also really like to thank my best friend Lou and my family for being here today, as well as everybody from Statement Arts. Thank you so much for coming. And I'd also really like to thank Cheryl, the advisors, and everybody from DSI for being for me from day one. So thank you all, and thank you for coming.